My name is Nora, and I'm 32. I've always believed hard work builds trust, that a team grows stronger together. Picture me at my desk, spreadsheets open, proud of our latest project. The office buzzes, but I catch whispers, sidelong glances. Then Jude strides over, a petition in hand, his smirk sharp. 23 signatures, he says, to remove me. My heart sinks as I scan names I thought were friends. Betrayal cuts deep, but I won't crumble yet. Have you ever been blindsided by those you trusted? Share where you're watching from, and if this resonates, like and subscribe. I sat at my desk, the petition tucked in a drawer like a secret I wasn't ready to face. My screen glowed with numbers, but my eyes kept drifting to that folded paper. 23 names. People I'd laughed with over coffee, like Candace, who always brought donuts on Fridays, or Riley, who'd asked me to proofread her slides just last month. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but my mind replayed Jude's smirk, his voice so smug when he said they wanted me gone. How had I missed this? I opened the petition, smoothing it flat. Each signature felt like a tiny cut. Candace's loopy cursive, Riley's sharp, hurried scrawl, even Tessa, who'd cried on my shoulder when her cat died. I tried to focus on my work, pulling up the latest project metrics. Our team had streamlined a client process, cutting costs by 15%. I'd stayed late for weeks, tweaking workflows, double-checking data. I thought we were a unit, celebrating that win together. But now, those same people wanted me out. My stomach twisted, and I pushed the paper back into the drawer, slamming it shut. The noise drew a glance from Clara, a junior analyst, across the aisle. She looked away quickly, her cheeks pink like she'd been caught staring. I wondered if she'd signed too. I wanted to ask, to demand answers, but my throat felt tight, words stuck somewhere deep. Instead, I clicked through emails, pretending to read. One caught my eye, a thank you from a client praising my leadership and insight. I snorted softly. Leadership. Was that what they hated? Had I pushed too hard, spoken up too often in meetings? I leaned back, rubbing my temples. 6 months ago, I'd led a project that saved our division thousands. Jude had presented it to the board, taking the spotlight, while I sat quietly thinking teamwork meant sharing credit. I'd brushed it off, told myself it didn't matter who got the praise. But maybe that was the start. Maybe Jude had been planting seeds, turning people against me. The thought made my chest ache, like I'd been carrying a weight I hadn't noticed until now. Clara stood her chair, squeaking, and walked over, clutching a notebook. Her eyes darted around before settling on me. "Nora, can I ask you something?" she said, her voice low. I nodded, bracing myself. She hesitated, then leaned closer. "I didn't sign it. I swear. But Jude's been talking. He says you're trying to take over, that you're making us look bad." Her words hit like a slap, but her nervous fidgeting softened the blow. She was scared, caught in the middle. "Take over," I repeated, keeping my tone even. "Clara, I'm just doing my job." "I know," she said quickly. I told him that. "But he's convincing. People are listening." She glanced over her shoulder like Jude might appear. "I just thought you should know." I forced a smile, my lips tight. "Thanks for telling me." She nodded and hurried back to her desk, leaving me alone with her warning. Jude's campaign against me wasn't just a petition, it was a story he'd been weaving, one I hadn't seen coming. I opened my project file again, staring at the numbers. They were solid, undeniable. But would they be enough? My hands shook as I saved the file, my confidence fraying at the edges. The office clock ticked louder each second, pulling me closer to a fight I wasn't sure I could win. I left the office that evening, the weight of Clara's words clinging to me like damp air. My apartment was a 30-minute walk, but I needed the time to think, to let the city's noise drown out my spiraling thoughts. The streets were alive with honking cabs and chattering pedestrians, but I felt like I was moving through a fog. Jude's campaign, Clara had called it. Not just a petition, but a deliberate effort to erase me. I zipped my jacket higher, the autumn chill biting my cheeks. At home, I found Harper sprawled on my couch, her phone glowing as she scrolled. The living room smelled faintly of her lavender vape, a habit I'd asked her to quit indoors. I dropped my bag and sank into a chair, hoping she'd notice my silence, maybe ask how my day was. Instead, she laughed at something on her screen, oblivious. "Harper," I said, my voice sharper than I meant. "Can we talk?" She glanced up, eyebrows raised. "What's up? You look like you lost a client." Her tone was light teasing, but it grated. I wanted to tell her about the petition, the signatures, the way my world was cracking. But before I could, she waved her phone. "Check this out. I'm thinking of signing up for this marketing course. It's online, super legit." I frowned, my patience thinning. "How much is it?" "Like $800, she said, shrugging. "But it's an investment, right? I'll pay you back once I'm working." My jaw tightened. Harper had been staying with me for 2 months, jobless, her savings drained. I'd covered her groceries, her phone bill, telling myself it was temporary. "With what money?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "You know I'm stretched thin already." She sat up, her face hardening. "Wow, Nora, way to make me feel like a burden. You're always so perfect, aren't you, Miss Corporate Star?" Her words stung, slicing open an old wound. Growing up, Harper was the golden child, charming, carefree, while I was the one picking up the pieces after our parents split. I'd cooked dinners, helped with her homework, all while she basked in attention. Now her resentment felt like another betrayal. "That's not fair," I said, my voice low. "I'm trying to help you, but you can't just—" "Forget it," she cut me off, standing. "I don't need your lecture." She stormed to the guest room, slamming the door. The silence that followed was heavy, pressing against my chest. I stared at the couch, her vape still on the cushion, and felt a pang of loneliness so sharp it stole my breath. I grabbed my laptop, needing something solid to anchor me. The project metrics loaded rows of numbers that proved my worth. Our division's 340% growth wasn't luck. It was my late nights, my revisions, my pitches to clients who'd nearly walked away. I opened a new document and started typing notes for the quarterly meeting, each word a small act of defiance. If Jude thought he could erase me, he'd have to face these results first. But as I worked, Harper's words echoed. Perfect. Burden. I thought of our childhood, how I'd buried my own dreams to keep her steady. Now she was here taking again, and I was alone fighting battles at work and home. I saved my notes and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The apartment felt too quiet, too small. I needed to face the office tomorrow, to walk past those signatures and hold my head high. But tonight, I wasn't sure I had the strength. I stood, grabbed my coat, and headed for the balcony, the city's hum calling me back to myself. The next morning I woke with a headache, the balcony's cool air still lingering in my lungs. I dressed carefully, choosing a blazer that felt like armor, and headed to the office. The walk was mechanical, my mind replaying Harper's slammed door, Jude's petition, Clara's whispered warning. I gripped my coffee cup, its warmth grounding me as I stepped into the building. The elevator ride was silent, but I felt eyes on me, imagined whispers behind cubicle walls. Today was our team meeting, a routine check-in before the quarterly review. I'd prepared slides, my data polished to a shine, ready to show our progress. But as I entered the conference room, the air felt thick. Jude sat at the head, flipping through papers, his posture too relaxed, too confident. Candace and Riley were there, eyes on their laptops, avoiding me. Tessa gave a small wave, but it felt forced, her smile thin. I took a seat near the back, my laptop open, my heart thudding. Jude started the meeting, his voice smooth as he recapped our projects. Then he clicked to my slides, the ones I'd sent last night. My name was on them, but he spoke as if they were his. "This process overhaul reduced turnaround time significantly," he said, gesturing at the screen. "The team's effort was crucial, though it caused some tension." He paused, glancing at me, his lips twitching. "Nora's approach, while effective, has been a bit aggressive, hasn't it? We've had feedback about stress levels." The room went quiet. My face burned, but I kept my expression neutral, my hands clasped under the table. Aggressive. I'd stayed late to fix their errors, coach them through client calls. I scanned the faces. Riley's head was down, Candace's fingers froze on her keyboard. No one spoke up. I cleared my throat, raising my hand. "Jude, can I clarify something?" He waved me off, his smile tight. "Let's keep moving, Nora. We've got a lot to cover." He clicked to the next slide, dismissing me. My pulse raced, anger bubbling in my chest. This wasn't just about credit, it was a public attack, a way to justify that petition. I wanted to stand to call him out, but the weight of 23 signatures held me back. After the meeting, I lingered in the hallway, my laptop clutched to my chest. Candace passed by, her purse slung over her shoulder. I stepped in front of her, my voice low but firm. "Candace, why did you sign it?" She froze her eyes wide, then looked away. "Jude said you were gunning for a promotion, Nora, that you'd throw us under the bus to get it." Her voice was barely a whisper, like she was ashamed, but not enough to take it back. "That's a lie." I said, my throat tight. "You've known me for 2 years. You think I'd do that?" She shrugged, her gaze on the floor. "I don't know." Jude made it sound real. "I'm sorry, okay." She hurried away, leaving me rooted in place. Her apology was a knife sharp and useless. I thought of the donuts she'd shared, the late-night chats about her kids' soccer games. All of it felt fake now, a mask over her betrayal. Back at my desk, I tried to focus, but my screen blurred. I opened my project folder, checking the files I'd need for the quarterly meeting. Everything was there: charts, client emails, proof of my work. But as I scrolled, my breath caught. A key report was gone, one I'd finalized last week. I searched my drive. My email, nothing. My stomach sank. I stood scanning the office, wondering if this was another move in Jude's game. My chair creaked as I sat back down, my hands trembling. This wasn't just a petition anymore, it was war. I stared at my screen, the missing report's absence like a hole in my chest. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, searching folders again, hoping I'd overlooked it. Nothing. I leaned back, my pulse loud in my ears. The office hummed around me, phones ringing, keyboards clacking, but it felt distant, like I was underwater. I glanced at my desk, noticing my pens neatly aligned, my sticky notes gone. A single note sat under my mousepad, block letters in black ink. "Focus on teamwork, not glory." My breath caught. This wasn't an accident. Someone had been here, tampering, taunting. I tucked the note in my pocket, my hands shaking. Jude's face flashed in my mind, his smug dismissal in the meeting. Was this his doing, or had others joined him? I looked around, catching Tessa's quick glance before she turned away. The air felt thick with unspoken alliances, and I was on the outside. I wanted to march to Jude's desk, demand answers, but my legs felt heavy, rooted by the fear of making things worse. I left for lunch, needing air. The break room was empty, its fluorescent lights buzzing. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to Harper's number. Last night's fight still stung, her accusation that I was lording my success over her. I typed a message asking if we could talk tonight, then deleted it. What was the point? She'd made it clear I was alone in this, just like at work. I grabbed a stale bagel from the counter, forcing myself to eat, but it tasted like cardboard. Back at my desk, I tried to rebuild the missing report from memory. My notes were scattered, my focus fractured. Every click felt like wading through mud. Then an email pinged from Sheila in HR requesting a meeting tomorrow. No details, just a time and place. My stomach twisted. Was this about the petition? Had Jude escalated things, spinning a story to HR? I imagined him in her office, painting me as the problem, his words smooth and convincing. I stood, needing to move, and headed to the supply closet for paper. Inside, I overheard voices through the thin wall, Riley and another coworker, their tones hushed but sharp. "She's acting like nothing happened," Riley said. "After that meeting, I'd be gone." The other voice, maybe Tessa's, laughed softly. "Jude's right. She's too much. Always has to be the star." My chest tightened, my hand frozen on a ream of paper. I waited silent until their footsteps faded, then leaned against the wall, my breath shallow. They weren't just signing a petition, they were rewriting who I was. At home, I found Harper in the kitchen, eating takeout she'd ordered on my account. The smell of fried rice hit me, but my appetite was gone. "You used my card again," I said, my voice flat. She rolled her eyes, scooping food. "I'll pay you back, Nora. Chill." Her nonchalance was a slap, her entitlement echoing the office's betrayal. I wanted to scream, to tell her about the note, the missing file, the whispers, but her dismissive glance stopped me. "You're so dramatic," she added, turning back to her plate. I retreated to my room, locking the door. My laptop sat on the bed, but I couldn't face it. Instead, I pulled out the sticky note, rereading its message. Teamwork, not glory. It felt like a warning, a line drawn in the sand. I crumpled it, my nails digging into my palms. The office, Harper, the world. It was closing in and I was suffocating. I needed to fight back to prove them wrong, but tonight, all I could do was sit in the dark, the weight of their words crushing me. The quarterly meeting loomed like a storm cloud, and I walked into the conference room with my laptop clutched tight, my notes triple-checked. My blazer felt too stiff, my heels too loud on the tile. The room was packed, every chair filled the air, humming with anticipation. Marcus, our CEO, stood at the front, his presence commanding but warm. I took a seat near the middle, my heart hammering. This was my chance to show my work, to let the numbers speak louder than Jude's petition. Marcus opened with a smile, praising our division's 340% growth. "This quarter's results are historic," he said, his voice carrying over the murmurs. "Let's hear from the team leads." My slides were queued, my data ready to shine. I adjusted my notes, my fingers steady despite the knot in my stomach. Jude stood first, his posture relaxed, his tie perfectly knotted. He launched into a recap of our projects, his words polished, claiming the team's collaborative spirit drove our success. My name didn't come up, not once. I shifted in my seat, my jaw tight, waiting for my turn. When he finished, I raised my hand, my voice clear. "Marcus, I'd like to present my report." He nodded, gesturing to the podium. I stood smoothing my blazer and walked to the front, my slides loading on the screen. I started strong, detailing the client wins, the late nights, streamlining processes, the data that backed our growth. The room was quiet, eyes on me, some curious, some cold. I felt a flicker of pride, my voice growing steadier with each slide. Then Jude stood, interrupting mid-sentence. "If I may?" "Marcus," he said, his tone smooth but sharp. He clicked a remote, and a new slide appeared, a scanned copy of the petition, 23 signatures, bold and clear. Gasps rippled through the room. "Nora's leadership has been divisive," he said, addressing everyone but me. "This petition, signed by nearly half the team, shows we need change. Her approach is tearing us apart." My knees buckled, but I gripped the podium, my face burning. The signatures loomed on the screen, each name a betrayal etched in ink. Candace, Riley, Tessa, people I'd trained, laughed with, trusted. The room spun, their faces blurring into a sea of judgment. I opened my mouth to speak, but my throat closed, words trapped. Jude sat back down, his smirk barely hidden, and the silence was deafening. My notes trembled in my hands, my carefully built defense crumbling under the weight of their stares. I forced myself to breathe, my mind racing. I thought of my mother, her voice steady when she taught me to stand tall after our family fell apart. I couldn't run, not now. But before I could find my voice, Clara stood her chair, scraping loudly. Her hands shook, but her eyes were fierce. "I need to say something," she said, her voice cracking but firm. "I was pressured to sign that petition. Jude told us Nora was sabotaging the team, but it's not true. She's the reason I've grown here. She's the reason we hit those numbers." The room erupted in whispers, heads turning. My chest tightened, a mix of gratitude and shock. Clara's words were a lifeline, but the petition still hung on the screen, its accusations louder than her defense. I looked at Marcus, his face unreadable, and then at Jude, whose confidence faltered for the first time. The air crackled, the truth teetering on the edge, but I wasn't sure if it was enough to save me. Clara's words hung in the air, a fragile shield against the petition's glare on the screen. I stood frozen at the podium, my hands gripping its edges, my pulse a drumbeat in my ears. The whispers grew louder, a swarm of voices buzzing with shock and doubt. I scanned the room, searching for allies, but most faces were masks, some curious, some hostile. Riley stared at her hands, Candace at the ceiling. Tessa's eyes met mine, then darted away. Her guilt palpable but silent. Jude rose again, his voice cutting through the noise. Clara's emotional Marcus. She's young, impressionable. But the numbers don't lie, 23 signatures speak for the team's truth. He gestured to the screen, his confidence surging back. Nora's push too hard alienated us. We can't function like this. His words were a blade slicing deeper with each syllable, and the room leaned in, hungry for more. Marcus raised a hand, silencing Jude. His gaze turned to me, steady but piercing. Nora, respond. My mouth went dry, my mind blank. I'd prepared for data, not this a public execution. I opened my notes, but the words swam meaningless against the petition's weight. My voice cracked, barely audible. I cleared my throat, forcing myself to stand taller. My work speaks for itself. The 340% growth, the client retention, it's all in the data. Jude laughed, a short, sharp sound that echoed. Data's not leadership, Nora. You've made us miserable chasing your own glory. He turned to the team, his arms wide. Right. Tell Marcus how it's been. A murmur rippled through the room, and then Riley spoke, her voice small but clear. It's been tense. Nora's always pushing, always correcting. It's exhausting. Candace nodded, her voice bolder. She acts like she's above us. It's not a team anymore. Each word was a stone piling on my chest. I wanted to scream that I'd stayed late to fix their mistakes, that I'd fought for their bonuses. But my voice failed me, my strength leaking away. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in. Marcus's expression hardened, his pen tapping the table. This is serious, he said. I need to know who authorized this petition and why it wasn't brought to me first. Jude hesitated, his eyes flickering. It was a group effort, Marcus. We followed protocol. But his voice wavered, and I saw a crack in his armor. It wasn't enough, though. The team's silence was louder, their accusations a chorus I couldn't drown out. Clara sat down, her face pale, her courage spent. I looked at her, grateful but sinking the room's judgment suffocating me. I stepped back from the podium, my legs unsteady. My eyes burned, but I refused to cry here, not in front of them. I gathered my notes, my fingers fumbling, and walked to my seat, every step heavy. The meeting blurred on, voices fading into a dull roar. I sat staring at my laptop, the petition's image still seared in my mind. I was exposed, broken open, and the pieces of me were scattered across that room with no way to gather them back. I left the conference room like I was walking through quicksand, each step pulling me deeper into the weight of what had happened. My laptop was heavy in my arms, my notes crumpled from gripping them too tight. The office felt like a maze of accusing eyes, but I made it to the bathroom, locking myself in a stall. There alone, I let the tears come hot and silent, my body shaking as I pressed my forehead against the cold metal door. Riley's words. Candace's nod. Jude's laugh, they played on a loop, carving into me. But Clara's stand, her trembling voice flickered like a small flame in the dark. I clung to it, wiping my face with shaky hands. I couldn't stay broken, not here. Back at my desk, I moved on instinct, opening my email to Sheila in HR. My fingers hovered, then typed a request for a meeting, attaching my project files, every email, every chart, every late-night revision that proved my work. I wasn't just defending myself. I was laying out the truth. Jude had twisted the narrative, but numbers didn't lie. I hit send, my heart pounding, a spark of defiance igniting. This was my first step, small, but mine. I couldn't stop there. I opened a new document and started drafting a proposal for a team-building workshop. If they thought I was divisive, I'd show them I could unite. I outlined exercises on communication, trust, even conflict resolution, drawing from a seminar I'd attended years ago. Each word felt like a brick building something solid out of the rubble of that meeting. I emailed it to Marcus, copying the team, my breath catching as I hit send. It was a risk, some would see it as desperate, others as bold, but I was done hiding. As I saved the file, a shadow fell across my desk. I looked up to see Gavin, a new hire who'd started last month. His glasses were slightly crooked, his tie loose, but his eyes were kind. Heard about the meeting, he said, keeping his voice low. That was rough. You okay? I nodded, not trusting my voice. He leaned against the cubicle wall, glancing around before speaking. I've been through something like this. At my old job, they ganged up on me for calling out a manager's mistake. Felt like the whole room turned. His story hit close a mirror to my own. How'd you get through it? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He shrugged, a half smile forming. Kept showing up. Did my work. Found one person who had my back. He paused, then added, You've got Clara. And for what it's worth, I think your numbers are badass. I laughed, a small surprise sound that loosened the knot in my chest. Gavin's honesty was a lifeline, a reminder that not everyone was against me. I thought of my mother again, how she'd faced her own battles after our family splintered, never letting bitterness win. I wasn't alone, not entirely. Clara's courage, Gavin's words, they were enough to keep me moving. I straightened in my chair, my resolve hardening. Jude wanted me gone, but I'd fight with every tool I had, starting now. Gavin's words stayed with me as I left the office, his quiet encouragement like a tether pulling me forward. The city was gray, a light drizzle coating my jacket, but I barely noticed. My mind was on the email to Sheila, the workshop proposal, the small acts of defiance I'd set in motion. They weren't loud, but they were mine, and that felt like a start. I walked faster, my heels clicking against the wet pavement, each step a reminder that I was still here, still fighting. At home, Harper was in the living room, her suitcase half packed on the floor. The sight stopped me cold. She'd been dodging my requests to contribute, but this was new. She looked up, her expression a mix of defiance and guilt. I'm moving out by the end of the month, she said, her voice flat. Found a roommate online. You don't have to keep carrying me. Her words were sharp, but there was a crack in them, a hint of something softer. I set my bag down, my chest tight. Part of me wanted to let her go, to let the distance between us grow. But I thought of our childhood, the nights I'd braided her hair while she cried about our parents' fights. I wasn't her keeper anymore, but I wasn't ready to lose her completely. Harper, I said, sitting across from her, I don't want you gone. I want us to be honest. You hurt me using my card, dismissing me. But I'm not perfect either. She blinked, her hands stilling on a folded shirt. You always seem like you've got it together, she said, quieter now. It's hard, Nora. I'm trying, but I'm not you. Her admission hit me, a glimpse of the sister I'd lost in our years of resentment. I leaned forward, my voice steady. I don't need you to be me. Just meet me halfway. Get a job, pay your share, and we'll figure it out, together. Harper nodded, her eyes glassy. Okay, I got an interview tomorrow. Coffee shop, nothing big, but it's something. I smiled, a real one. The tension in my shoulders easing. It wasn't fixed, but it was a step, and I'd take it. I stood, offering her a quick hug, her warmth a small anchor after the office's coldness. Later, I sat at my kitchen table, a flyer catching my eye, a local book club meeting at the library. I'd always loved reading, but work had swallowed my time. Something in me stirred a need for connection beyond cubicles and family strain. I signed up online, my fingers quick, then texted Gavin asking if he'd join. His reply was instant. Count me in. I grinned, the promise of a new space, new voices, lighting a spark I hadn't felt in months. Before bed, I opened my laptop, refining my workshop proposal. I added a section on accountability, inspired by Harper's promise, my own resolve. Each sentence was a choice, a refusal to let Jude's narrative define me. I thought of Clara's stand, Gavin's story, my mother's strength. They were threads weaving a net to catch me. I saved the file, closed my laptop, and stood by my window, the city's lights soft through the rain. I didn't have all the answers, but I had this moment, this quiet certainty. I turned off the light, my reflection steady in the glass, and knew I was ready for whatever came next. The morning after I sent the workshop proposal, my inbox pinged with a reply from Sheila in HR. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee cooling, and opened it with a tight chest. She'd reviewed my files and found evidence of Jude's misconduct, altered reports, emails he'd sent to sway the team. He was demoted to a non-lead role effective immediately, and the petition was voided. I read the words twice, waiting for relief, but my stomach stayed knotted. It was a win, but the office still felt like a minefield. At work, the air was different, charged with whispers. I walked to my desk, my steps deliberate, avoiding eyes. A few coworkers nodded, their smiles cautious, like they were testing the water. Tessa stopped by, her voice low. "I'm sorry, Nora. I shouldn't have signed. Jude made it sound like you were out for yourself." Her apology was soft, earnest, but it landed like a pebble in a well, ripples but no depth. I nodded, murmuring thanks, but her words didn't erase the sting of her name on that paper. I opened my laptop, finding an email from Marcus approving my workshop. He'd scheduled it for next week, asking me to lead. I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering. This was what I'd wanted, proof I could build, not break. But the weight of leading a team that had turned on me pressed hard. I started preparing, pulling up notes, but my mind wandered to the meeting, to Riley's accusation that I was exhausting. Was I mid-morning? I led the workshop in a small conference room, my slides simple but clear. Clara was there, her notebook open, her eyes bright with support. Tessa and a few others joined, their postures stiff but present. I spoke about trust, about owning mistakes, my voice steady, despite the pulse in my throat. Clara nodded along, jotting notes, but Tessa stared at her hands, her silence loud. Halfway through, I asked the group to share ideas for better collaboration. Clara offered a suggestion about weekly check-ins, her enthusiasm lifting the room. But the others stayed quiet, their hesitance a wall I couldn't climb. After I sat alone in the room, stacking chairs. The silence was heavy, broken only by the hum of the projector cooling down. I'd expected more apologies that meant something, a shift I could feel. Instead, the team's divide lingered, a crack that hadn't closed. I thought of Sheila's email, Jude's demotion. It should have felt like justice, but it was hollow, like winning a game no one else was playing. I packed my bag, my movements slow, and headed to the elevator, the weight of their silence settling deeper into my bones. The elevator doors closed, sealing me in with my thoughts. I pressed the button for the lobby, my reflection faint in the metal walls, eyes tired but sharp. Marcus's email waited in my inbox when I checked my phone. A personal note, not a mass send. He wanted me to present at a regional conference next month, citing my leadership as exceptional. The words should have lifted me, but they felt like a spotlight I wasn't ready for. I stepped into the lobby, the late afternoon light slanting through glass, and let the praise sit unclaimed. At home, Harper was in the kitchen chopping vegetables, a rare sight. She looked up, her knife pausing. "Got the job," she said, her voice steady but soft. "Barista part-time. I start Monday." I nodded, setting my bag down, a flicker of pride cutting through my numbness. "That's good, Harper. Really good." She smiled, small but real, and went back to chopping, the rhythm filling the silence. We didn't talk about her moving out or the fights, but the air was lighter, like we'd found a fragile truce. I ate dinner alone. Harper gone to meet her new roommate. The quiet let my mind wander back to the office, to Tessa's half apology, the workshop's muted response. I opened my laptop, pulling up the conference details. It was a big stage, a chance to show my work beyond our division. But Riley's words, exhausting above us, clung like damp cloth. I started drafting my presentation, but each slide felt like a test, a demand to prove I wasn't what they said. The next evening, I went to the book club at the library, my first time there. The room smelled of old pages and coffee, a circle of strangers clutching novels. Gavin was there, waving me over. We discussed a story about betrayal, and I found myself speaking, my voice low but clear. "The worst part isn't the act," I said, "it's realizing you didn't see it coming." A woman across the circle nodded, her eyes meeting mine, and shared her own story. A friend who'd turned on her. Others chimed in their voices, weaving a net of shared pain. I listened, my shoulders loosening, the office's weight lifting just a fraction. Back home, I sat on my couch, the book club's warmth lingering. Harper's job. Marcus's invitation, the group's stories, they were signs of movement, but the office's chill remained. I thought of Clara's effort, Gavin's nod, and felt a thread of hope, thin but real. Yet as I turned off the lamp, the dark pressed close, and I wondered if I'd ever feel whole in that office again. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my breath slow, the world quiet, except for the faint hum of the city outside. The week before the conference, I woke early, the sky still soft with dawn. My apartment was quiet. Harper already at her barista shift, her absence a new rhythm I was learning. I pulled on a sweater and sneakers, heading to a nearby park, the air crisp with late fall. The paths were empty leaves crunching underfoot, and I walked slowly, letting the world feel small and mine. My laptop sat untouched at home. The conference presentation nearly done, but today I needed space, not screens. I found a bench by a pond, its surface rippling gently. Sitting there, I thought of the workshop, how Clara's voice had carried hope, while others stayed silent. Then Riley's face came to mind, her unexpected visit to my desk yesterday. She'd stood there twisting a bracelet, her voice low. I was wrong, Nora. I signed because I was scared of falling behind. You're not exhausting, you're good at this. Too good, maybe. Her words weren't loud, but they landed a crack in the wall between us. I'd nodded, saying little, but her honesty stayed with me like a stone smoothed by water. My thoughts drifted to my childhood, to summers with my mother in her garden, her hands in the soil, teaching me how roots grow deep even when the surface looks bare. She'd faced her own storms, our father's absence, money struggles, but never let them harden her. I'd been carrying her lessons without realizing, choosing to build instead of break. The petition had tried to uproot me, but I was still here, my roots holding. At work, Marcus stopped by my desk, his suit jacket slung over one arm. Your workshop's making waves, he said, his tone warm but direct. We're rolling out a version company-wide, and I'm expecting big things at the conference. His words were a nod, a weight, and a gift. I thanked him, my voice steady, but inside I felt a shift, like a door creaking open. The office wasn't home, but it was less a battlefield now, the edges softening. I left the park, my breath visible in the cool air, and headed to the library for book club prep. Gavin had texted offering to help with my conference slides, his easy support a quiet constant. As I walked, I felt lighter, not because the hurt was gone, but because I'd carried it and kept going. The pond's ripples stayed in my mind, a reminder that small moves could spread far. I paused at a crosswalk, the city waking around me, and let myself breathe slow and deep, the world holding still for just a moment. I reached the library, its heavy doors creaking as I stepped inside. The book club was in an hour, but I arrived early, craving the hush of the stacks. I wandered to a corner table, a worn copy of a novel in my hands, its pages soft from years of readers. I didn't open it, just held it, letting the quiet settle over me like a blanket. My phone buzzed, Harper texting a photo of her in a barista apron, her smile shy but proud. I typed back a quick, "You got this?" my heart warm, the distance between us shrinking. Gavin arrived, his backpack slung over one shoulder, and we sat to review my conference slides. He pointed out a cluttered chart, suggesting a cleaner design, his feedback sharp but kind. I nodded, making notes, grateful for his steadiness. We laughed over a typo, the sound soft in the library's stillness, and I felt a piece of myself return, the part that could find joy in small things. The book club gathered, and I listened as a new member spoke about a novel's ending, her voice breaking as she described finding peace after loss. Her story wasn't mine, but it echoed, reminding me how far I'd come. Later I walked home, the city's lights smudging the dusk. Harper was waiting, a pizza box on the counter, her way of saying thanks. We ate in near silence, the kind that didn't need filling. She mentioned her new roommate, her plans to save for a course, and I saw her not as the sister I'd carried, but as someone finding her own path. I told her about the conference, my voice calm, and she listened, really listened, her eyes holding mine. After she left for her shift, I stood by my window, the glass cool against my palm. I thought of the office, how it had shifted, Riley's apology, Marcus's trust, the workshop's quiet impact. The hurt hadn't vanished, but it was softer, like a bruise fading. I remembered my mother's hands, how she'd hold mine during storms, her touch steady. I'd been my own anchor these months, and that was enough. I turned to my desk, the conference script waiting, but I didn't open it. Instead, I sat on the couch, the room dark except for a single lamp, and let my breath slow the world falling away until it was just me, whole and still. The conference morning arrived crisp and clear, the hotel ballroom buzzing with voices. I stood backstage, my notes in hand, my navy dress pressed and simple. My name was on the program, a small line among bigger titles, but it felt like mine earned. When I stepped to the podium, the lights were bright, the crowd a sea of faces. I spoke about data-driven strategy, my voice steady weaving in stories of our team's grit. Questions came sharp and engaged, and I answered, my confidence quiet but real. Marcus shook my hand after his nod. Brief but warm, and Clara texted from the office saying the team had streamed it, cheering. Back at work, the air had shifted. A small banner hung by my desk, a team gesture, its bright letters spelling out congratulations. Candace approached, her voice low, her apology full this time. I was wrong, Nora. I saw you up there and I felt small. You didn't deserve what we did. I listened, my heart open but guarded, and thanked her, setting a line we both understood. The office wasn't perfect. Some glances still lingered, some silences held weight, but it was livable, a place I could navigate. Harper's new place was a short bus ride away, and I visited one Sunday, her apartment small but hers. She'd hung a photo of us as kids, our smiles wide under summer sun. We cooked pasta laughing when the sauce splattered and planned a weekly dinner, no strings attached. She was working steady shifts, saving for that course, and I saw her strength not as my shadow, but as her own. Our past wasn't erased, but we were building something new, piece by careful piece. Evenings found me at the book club, my chair by the window, the group's voices a soft hum. I'd started journaling after small entries about the day, a client's thank you, a stranger's smile on the subway. It wasn't grand, but it grounded me, a habit that felt like stitching myself back together. Gavin joined me for coffee sometimes, his dry humor a comfort, our friendship easy and unforced. I'd walk home under streetlights, the city's pulse steady, and feel a quiet pride, not for winning but for staying. I sat one night on my balcony, a blanket over my shoulders, the skyline sharp against the dusk. The petition's shadow was there, a faint outline, but it no longer loomed. I'd faced it not with anger but with work, with choices, with showing up. The stars were faint, drowned by city glow, but I found one steady and small, and let my breath slow the world soft and open around me. One morning I woke to rain tapping my window, the sound soft but persistent. I stayed in bed, listening, my journal open on the nightstand. I'd written about the conference, Harper's new start, the book club's warmth, but also the quieter moments, walking alone, cooking for myself, choosing silence over noise. Those moments weren't loud, but they were where I'd found myself again. I got up, made tea, and sat by the window, watching droplets trace paths on the glass. The world felt steady, not because it was perfect, but because I'd learned to stand in it. I thought about the petition not with anger, but with clarity. It had been a mirror showing me who I trusted, who I was. I'd spent years proving myself to coworkers, to Harper, to the shadow of my past. But proving wasn't living. I'd learned to let go of their judgments, to hold my work not as a shield, but as a truth. Forgiveness came slowly, not for them, but for me, a release from carrying their weight. I forgave Candace for her silence, Riley for her fear, even Jude for his ambition. It didn't erase the hurt, but it freed me to move forward lighter. The lesson wasn't about winning or being right. It was about choosing myself every day in small ways, writing a line in my journal, laughing with Gavin, cooking with Harper. Life wasn't a race to be enough. It was a quiet walk, one step at a time. I'd stumbled, fallen, but I'd risen, not louder but truer. That was my strength, and it was enough for anyone listening, anyone who'd ever felt unseen. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be you and keep going. What moment made you realize your own strength? Share it in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. If this resonated, Please like and subscribe to join me in more journeys like this and share it with someone who needs it. Thank you for being here, for listening. Here's to healing, to finding your way, one quiet step at a time.